aggressive, they're active. They're not huge guys, but they're very strong and they're very active. They got some talented guys in the secondary, and they do some stuff, defensively where they're going to try to confuse you and bring pressure from different places and that type of thing. Offensively, they want to run the football, and, we've got to have a solid game plan, make sure we're playing assignment football and understand what gaps different guys got, and we're doing what we need to do and tackle well. They're a good football team. They're coached very well. They've gotten better every year that this particular head coach has been there, and they're going to come here looking for their first win just like we are. So, number one for us, we've got to not turn the ball over. Number two for us, we've got to not commit a lot of penalties, which we had too many penalties in the first game, and we've got to find a way to finish drives and get the ball in the end zone to score some points. So, if we can protect the football and not commit as many penalties, I think we'll have an opportunity to be in the game. But we've got to clean up our own stuff, and it's almost not even that important who the opponent is. We've got to make sure that Morgan State isn't defeating Morgan State, which in a lot of instances is what happened to us in the first game.
Thank you, Coach. That concludes my questions. We will now open up the call for questions from the media.
Ladies and gentlemen, to register a question, please press the 1 followed by the 4 on your telephone. You will hear a 3-tone prompt to acknowledge your request. If your question has been answered and you'd like to withdraw your registration, please press the 1 followed by the 3. If you're using a speakerphone, please lift your hands up before entering your request. Once again, to register a question, press 1-4 on your telephone keypad. And our first question comes from the line of Mike Klingeman of Baltimore Sun. Please proceed with the question.
Coach, the good news, I guess, is that last year in the opener you gave up 51 points, and this year you're down to 10.
Yeah, I think, there's really not, in these instances, the disappointing thing is you come away with a loss, and that's a game where we felt like we had some opportunities to win, and in a lot of ways we delivered some gifts, in certain instances, which enabled them to come away with the win. Our defense has definitely played better in this first game compared to last season, and now we've got to find a way to get our offense going. But, 10 points in a situation where you don't score any points, 10 points is too many, and we got to find a way to not turn the ball over and get him an opportunity from the 2-yard line to score a touchdown.
Yeah. Is your defense that much better than last year, or is Towson hurting offensively? They've got their same quarterback back. You pretty much throttled the guy who came from Oregon, and their top running back only got like 17 yards against you guys. What is it? Something special you did this time, or against them, or did you really make that many inroads defensively in the offseason?
Well, I'm definitely not going to minimize the performance of our offense and say that Towson's not very good. They're a quality CAA football team and arguably one of the most competitive CAA and one of the most competitive FCS conferences in the country. I think our defensive coaching staff and our defensive players did a phenomenal job of preparing a game plan to identify the things that they did well, and we shut those things down. So I think our defense did a phenomenal job. I think 102 yards of total offense is probably one of the best defensive performances in the history of Morgan State University football. So I'm not at all going to minimize our performance defensively. We got to find a way to score points offensively. I think our defense is a year older, a year more mature, and those guys want to be special. Our defensive coordinator, Ernest Jones, and our defensive staff did a great job of analyzing, breaking down film, and trying to find tendencies and trying to find the things that would enable us to be successful. And with the exception of a few penalties and one or two not necessarily explosive plays, but plays more than 10 yards, we had their number the majority of the day. And in days like that, where your defense performs well, in the other phases of the game, we've got to assist with what the defense does and find a way to score 11 points so we can come away with a win in that particular game.
Brandon Griffin, linebacker, 8 tackles, a sack, an interception, MEAC Player of the Week. Did you expect that out of him?
Brandon's a very smart player. He comes from a football family. He's been around football his entire life and does a really good job. He did a great job in preseason camp, trying to insert himself into a leadership role, and did a really good job of understanding our game plan and learning what we thought Towson's tendencies were. So those guys were able to react and play fast. get around the ball and make some plays. And I expect for him to do nothing but get better over the course of the season.
What grade would you give Elijah Staley for the opener?
Obviously, we come away with a loss. I think probably a C-. He's got too many turnovers, 3 interceptions, and then a fumble. But at the end of the day, the kid hasn't played a solid football game where he's played the entire game since 2014. So for us, for me as a head coach, when we go into a game, even though we know he's going to be a really good player and hopefully one of the best quarterbacks in this league, we've got to be realistic about what we ask him to do. And I think going into the first game, hindsight is always 20/20, but to walk in the door and expect him to throw 46 passes and do all the things that we asked him to do in the first game that he's really had a chance to play 60 minutes of football was probably a little bit too much. So we've got to go back, reevaluate what all we ask him to do, and ensure that we're doing the things that are going to allow us to be successful offensively. We've got to take some pressure off of him by getting some other guys offensively involved. We've got to get him some easy throws, and we got to break him in and ease him into feeling like he's contributing and not feeling like he has to win the game with every single throw. But I think he's going to get better. I think we probably asked him to do a little bit too much, and I think we'll evaluate that as we move forward and try to make sure we're putting him in the best possible situation to be successful and help our offense execute and flow and score points.
Our next question comes from the line of Mark Singleace of Albany Times-Union. Please proceed with the question.
Yeah, you Albany's Carl Morfor. I understood that he was a player that you had recruited and offered. Is that accurate? And what did you see in him when you watched him play in high school?
We definitely recruited Carl. Carl was a big, strong back that had a lot of positive attributes. We thought he caught the ball well. We thought he was a very good runner. We thought he had good size. Recruiting is a thing where you recruit a lot of kids, and sometimes you get some of them, sometimes you don't get some of them. It's not an exact science, and everybody tries to find the kids that they think will fit into their program the best way. And I definitely think it's a great recruit for Albany. He played well in the first game, and hopefully we'll have an opportunity to get a chance to compete against them and match our defense up against them and see how that goes.
Thank you very much.
And there are no further questions at this time. And
Coach Farrier, before we close out, just talk about opening up at home and what does that mean, especially coming off a close game against a city rival in Towson.
I think anytime you get a chance to play at home, it's got to be special. Home has got to be the place where you protect. Everybody talks about protecting their home field and creating a home field advantage. It's a place where our fans get to come out and support our players, and we get an opportunity to compete against a ranked team, a team that's a very good football team, and see if we can find a way to become a better team between week 1 and week 2. We got a lot of work to get done before Saturday, a lot of improvements to make. And that's going to be my job and our coaching staff's job to ensure that we're a better football team in week 2 than we were in week 1. It's going to be an exciting week. We're going to go back to work. We're going to dig in and try to get this thing figured out to make sure we're putting the best possible product on the field and taking advantage of the things which our players can do well. And to get a chance to play at home against a quality opponent, I think that's what college football is all about. And our fans will be there. They'll be rooting for us and looking forward to us putting the best possible Morgan State University football team that we can put on the field at 1 o'clock on Saturday.
Thank you, Coach, and have a good week, and good luck this Saturday afternoon versus Albany.
Thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Once again, Morgan State University will open up their home portion of the 2017 schedule versus University of Albany. The game will take place at 1 p.m. and will be streamed live on MorganStateBears.com. Alex Wood, the Rattlers fell to Arkansas last week and are off this week as they prepare to take on Tennessee State next week on September 16th. Good morning, Coach. How you doing?
Good morning, Ryan. How are you doing?
I'm fine. Recap last week's game versus Arkansas as they held them scoreless in 3 of the first 4 possessions. Talk about the early part of the game.
Well, obviously, that, gave us a chance, obviously, to compete in that game, to have a chance to take their offense 3 and out, and then it was up to us, offensively to generate some offense and drive the football and try to go score, which obviously we weren't able to do until late in the game. But, it was encouraging, that we were able to do that from a defensive perspective, obviously, to take a team, an SEC team, 3 and out on a couple of different occasions, and then even later in the ball game. And then our special teams needed to help us a little bit, and probably wasn't our best performance in terms of field position for our offense. In terms of how the special teams left us, once they executed their play on the field, the punt team, and obviously punt return.
And also talk about your secondary as Orlando McKinley and Terry Jefferson combined for 16 tackles. Just talk about their performance.
Yeah, they had some tackles. They were active back there. McKinley, reacts to the ball well, out of zone coverage when he sees the ball thrown, and had some pass breakups as well. I think we had 6 to 7 breakups in the game, which was good. And then obviously Terry had an interception, an INT as well, as we pressured their quarterback and forced him into a bad throw. But yeah, those guys were active back there, and obviously so. Arkansas is a running team, and you're going to need some help out of your secondary to help stop the run and give yourself a chance defensively, obviously.
Thank you, Coach. That concludes my questions. We will now open up the call for questions from the media.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. To register a question, press 1 followed by the 4 on your telephone keypad. Once again, to register a question, press 1, 4 on your telephone keypad. Okay, we have no questions at this time.
Coach, my last question to you will be just talk about the bye week coming up. I know it's early in the season, but does it come at a good time considering who do you have on tap next week, or you would like to have another game this week?
No, I think play 2 games and then have a bye and then get ready for a big game. A tough, and it's going to be another physical game, obviously, with Tennessee State. I think it comes at the right time. I like the way the schedule obviously has played out, the way we've got it set. So no, it's good for us. Give us a chance to really, take care of whatever bumps and bruises we have, and also just continue to work on fundamentals.
Thank you, Coach, for joining us, and good luck as you prepare for your game next week, and enjoy your bye week.
Well, thank you very much, Ryan. We sure will, and look forward to talking to you next week.
Same also, Coach. Thanks.
Yep.
Florida A&M is off this weekend and returns to action next week versus Tennessee State in Tampa, Florida. Next up, we have third-year Bethune-Cookman head coach Terry Sims. The Wildcats dropped their season opener at nationally ranked Miami last week and will travel west to face Southeastern Louisiana on Saturday. Good morning, Coach. How you doing?
Good morning, Ryan. How are you? I'm great.
I'm fine, Coach. Watching the game last week, your team fought from the opening whistle all the way to the final whistle. Just talk about your plan of attack throughout the game on Saturday.
Well, I mean, honestly, offensively, we were going to go into the game and we were going to take what they gave us, and I think Larry did a great job of doing just that. He took what the defense gave him. I look at the game totals, and our time of possession was 34 minutes, and their time of possession was 25. We just gave up a couple of too many big plays. We had 3 big plays that they had on us, 2 passes and 1 long run that really changed the whole complexion of the game. You look at the passing yards, we had 229, they had 233. They had a big day rushing the football. The third down conversions were close. First downs, we had 20, they had 28. We had 2 fourth down conversions. So when you look at a game like that, the guys played hard, didn't really give up a long drive. You know, we had a couple drives that they had that may have been 9 plays or so, but I thought the kids played well in all 3 phases of the game. You know, we just didn't play well enough. You know, and I think that the most thing that hurt us was the 13 penalties. That was the biggest thing. You can't have 13 penalties for 100 yards playing a team like that. You know, you play them and you have that many penalties, it's going to catch you somewhere down the road, and that's what happened. And you have a kid like Mark Walton running the football.
This week, Coach, it's rare, you know, in this part of the woods to see a MEAC team face off against a Southland Conference team as he traveled to southeastern Louisiana. Talk about how that game came about and also preview the Lions.
Honestly, we really couldn't find anyone else to play us, and that's just the truth. We looked around, we tried to find another game. They were the only folks that would really accept the game, and we're excited to go out and play because they're a nationally ranked team. You know, they've been good in the past, and I think it's going to be a great challenge. I don't think you can measure your team or you can look at where your team is unless you play great competition. And looking at them and looking at the guys that they have coming back on their roster, you know, they took Louisiana Lafayette to the wire on Saturday. So I think it's going to be an aggressive, exciting football game on Saturday.
And lastly, just talk about the play of Daquan Richardson and his 13 tackles on Saturday.
Well, you know, Daquan is Daquan. He's gonna give you everything he has every snap. You know, I think he is really matured a lot in our defense. You know, he's running things a little bit more on the back end and you know, making our calls and making all the checks that need to be made. And he's still being effective in his own right. So having him back, having him have 13 tackles and 7 solos, you know, and actually play on all the special teams because he was on all of our special teams on Saturday. You know, he just did a great job individually, and I think bringing our defense along with him on Saturday, he did an excellent job of that. We're just looking to minimize the penalties and finish plays.
Thanks, Coach. That's all the questions I have. We'll now open up the call for questions from the media.
Ladies and gentlemen, to register a question, press 1-4 on your telephone keypad. Once again, to register a question, press 1-4 on your telephone keypad. Okay. And our first question comes from the line of Lute Williams of Black College Sports Page. Please proceed with your question.
Hey, Coach. Terry, how you doing today?
I'm excellent, Lute. How you doing?
Yeah, I thought your guys acquitted themselves well. But when you play a game like that, when you play up, do you think that the teams like the Miami, the FBS teams try to intimidate maybe late hits and that kind of thing?
Well, you know, I don't want to get myself in trouble. There were a few late hits that were not called, and you know they called one on us that was questionable. But you know, you have to live with that stuff. There's nothing you can do with it at that time, and we kind of just play through it. You know, our guys don't really get caught up in that. You know, we had 13 penalties. That's what was called, and you know that's what we accepted because you can't change them after they're called.
But what particular part of the way your guys played were you particularly proud of? How Larry moved the ball, how you threw the ball, how you ran the ball, or how your defense played? I know you had, like you mentioned, the big plays that you gave up, but what were you most enamored with in terms of coming out of the game?
I'll tell you, and I said this earlier this morning in the interview, just the resilience of this football team as a whole. These guys did not waver one bit the whole football game. They were locked in, and they played until the final horn blew, and that's the thing that was most pleasing for me. I expected it, but to actually see it happen and to see those guys go out and perform like that, it was just something that really let me know that we're back and these guys are ready to move forward.
Talk a little bit about Mike Jones getting back, what he gave you in the ground game, and he also caught some passes.
You know, Mike is a guy, number one, his maturity level is out of the roof. And you can't pay for the maturity that he brings to our backfield and to our offense, period. You know, but he also brings a different energy. You know, Mike Jones is a guy, he's not going to need a whole lot. He doesn't wear a lot of fancy stuff. He just puts his uniform on and goes and plays. And on Saturday, that's what he did. You know, he lined up and he caught some big balls out of the backfield, and he made some big runs. And he was one of the guys that I think helped lead this thing on Saturday. It was, 2 or 3 minutes left in the game, and he broke it. He broke a 31-yarder, and he was still running hard. You know, that's just who he is. So having him back is a pleasure, and I think it's going to do wonders for this football team this year.
Thanks, Coach. Good luck Saturday.
Thank you.
Our next question comes from the line of Ty Miller of SBN Sports. Please proceed.
Hey, Coach Sims. Good morning to you. It's Ty.
Hey, Ty. How you doing?
I'm good, Coach. Just want to talk to you about Southeastern Louisiana. This past weekend, they gave up 2 touchdowns on kickoff returns. So can you talk about the importance of the kicking game in this contest and how could that be effective for you?
Well, if you remember anything that I talk about, I always talk about all 3 phases of our game because we give a lot of time and attention to special teams because you can win or lose games on special teams. And I think, watching their game, thus far, special teams played a big part with both of the teams, with Southeastern and Louisiana Lafayette, because it was 2 kickoffs return and a punt return for touchdowns. So we definitely will continue to focus on that and make sure we do the necessary things not to allow that to happen to us on Saturday because it's going to be an important phase of the game. You can tell that they spend a lot of time on it, and it's important to them, and we have to make it just as important to our football team.
Also, Coach, I know you don't spend time on just individuals, but you got to pay attention to the guy, Eugene Bethea, who had 187 yards in that game. So your thoughts on him if you've taken a look at him?
Yeah, I have taken a look at him. He's a good football player. And, we just faced a good guy last week, and we have to show the same attention to this guy. They have a couple of good guys in their backfield, and they have a couple of explosive receivers. And they have a quarterback that can definitely get the ball to all those guys. So we have our work cut out for us, but, we're up for the challenge, and we're going to go and put our best foot forward and, put our football team back on the field and play, an exciting brand of Wildcat football.
And finally, Coach, I know it's not the same caliber of an opponent as Miami was this past weekend. However, it's a pretty good FCS opponent. So do you think that you match up a little bit better with this team as opposed to the team last week?
Yeah, I think we match up well with them. Again, anyone that watched our game on Saturday, I don't think we were overmatched on Saturday. We had a couple of big plays that we just let get away from us. So, yeah, I definitely think that we match up better with Southeastern. We match up well with them, I should say. But they're a top 25 FCS program, and they're a good football team. And we're just excited to go down and match up with them and see what happens.
Thank you, Coach.
Thanks again, Coach Sims, and good luck as you head down to Hammond, Louisiana this weekend to face off against Southeast Louisiana.
Thank you, Ryan.
Once again, Bethune-Cookman will head to Hammond, Louisiana to face off against the Lions of Southeastern Louisiana on Saturday night at 8 p.m. Eastern. The contest will be shown live on 11 Sports. We will now head north to Dover, Delaware for our fourth call this morning as we welcome third-year Delaware State head coach Kenny Carter. Delaware State fell to rival Delaware last week and kicks off MEAC play this Friday night at Hampton. Good morning, Coach. How you doing?
Good morning. How are you?
I'm fine. Coach, last week you called it. You said you mastered well against Delaware, and this was Delaware State's best performance to date against the Blue Hens. Outside of a couple of turnovers, just talk about how your team fared throughout the game.
Well, we played really good on defense. We had 2 goal line stops down there and made them kick field goals. We fared really well in the special teams. We had a fake punt that continued to drive that ended up, unfortunately, on that drive when we got the ball back on offense, being a turnover inside the 20, which would have gave us the lead. So we did a lot of really good things. We just need to be consistent and not turn the ball over. You just can't turn the ball over against anybody.
This week, you jump into conference play early. Just talk about what you've seen from Hampton and how well do you match up against them.
Well, you can tell that they're trying to get some things worked out on offense with the new play caller and just trying to work through a young offensive line, especially at the center position. But Coach Maynor is going to do what he does. They're going to be sound in everything they do. Defensively, Coach Ketchum has done a nice job with continuing to be consistent. They show a lot of resilience in how they go about their business schematically. But they've changed several things that they've done from last year to this year in the kicking game. So, we had to kind of revamp a couple things to make sure that we were ready to do what we needed to do in that phase.
And also, last week you had a true freshman quarterback play, and he passed for 165 yards on 12 of 28 attempts. Talk about his growth and also the player receiver, Sua Gudanet. Just talk about how did he make life a little easier for your freshman quarterback.
Well, he really he should have had more completions and yards than that because we had too many drops throughout the course of the game. So he probably would have thrown for close to 300 yards. He's unique. He's very mature. I mean, when the guy moved into during the summer, he had his own grease board. I mean, that's the kind of guy he is. He's very mature. He's a football nut. He has one habit, that's football, and you would never think that he was a freshman. When you watch him on film, it's very impressive, the things that he does and just the poise that he has. So we're very excited to have great stability at the quarterback position with Jack. Fatu Sulgodnet, he's just steady. That's just the kind of player he is. He's very smooth, and he's one of those guys that just works his butt off and does everything right in the passing game, does everything right in the run game. We're real happy at where we are at receiver. We just need to go ahead and finish drives in the red zone and continue to get we got to get touchdowns and not turn the ball over.
Thank you, Coach. We'll now open up the call for questions from the media.
Ladies and gentlemen, to register a question, press 1-4 on your telephone keypad. Once again, to register a question, press 1-4 on your telephone keypad. There are no questions at this time.
Coach Carter, with you playing a conference game this early and you have some newcomers on the team, how do you try to get them ready for the heat of conference, even though you may not know what some of them can do in game situations at this point of the season?
Well, we're not playing that many young guys outside of Jack and a couple of defensive linemen, and we have one guard that we're playing early. But the other guys have already played in the conference, and it's a championship game. I mean, every game in the conference is a championship game from here on out, and our guys understand that. Out of conference play is important to the overall win-loss record, but nothing says, regardless of how many years you have played in league play, this is a game that you must win if you want to win the MEAC. And so I'm glad that it's actually as early as it is because we've proved our guys know now that we can play with people and that we have the ability to win, The one thing we have not had in a long time here is when you come out of a game like that, at the beginning of the game, at halftime, at the end of the game, our guys know that, hey, we gave that one away, and we legitimately have the caliber of player necessary to go win in our conference. So that was huge, and that's where they sit. That's all we think about. We got guys that live and die football. So we're finally at a position now that going into our first MEAC game where we legitimately are going to try to be a contender.
And we do have a question from the line of Trevin A. Jones from Howard University Radio. Please proceed with your question.
Coach Carter, couldn't let you get away without a question. Coach, how you doing, Coach?
I'm good, Trevin. How are you?
I am well, as always. Thanks for asking. Hey, Coach, talk about your defense. I mean, you weren't down by much at halftime, and it looked like you had an impressive defensive performance. How impressed were you with your defense team-wise? And if there's any standout players that you could point out, if you would so, I'd appreciate it.
It was really 3-7, 3-7 going in, and 3-8. I'm sorry. We were really playing well, and the thing that happened for us is that we have depth at the linebacker position, and we have depth in the defensive line position. We are able to now shuttle defensive linemen in. Ulysses and Caleb have done a fantastic job of giving us an opportunity to really set the point on the line of scrimmage at the defensive end position. And then the two inside guys have done, Damon Atwater-Stevens and Jacob Jones, give us a push internally. When you watch us on film, the one thing that has not happened in a long time at our place is that you don't see movement. Our guys don't get knocked back like they used to. We're establishing position, and sometimes we are reestablishing the line of scrimmage in the backfield. And against an offensive line like Delaware, that tells you we've come a mighty long way.
And, Coach, this isn't the first time you've seen Hampton, of course. What is it about the Pirates that sticks out in your mind as you get ready to face them?
Well, when you lose that quarterback and you lose those really good receivers, things are a little bit different. That's not to say that they don't have players that are going to make plays, because they do. Coach Maynor is a really good football coach. He's got a good staff, and they're sound on defense. They always have been. But they've clearly adjusted some things in the kicking game. And I don't know if maybe it's because they kind of parcel it out among the staff, and not one person is over the whole thing. And they have some changes in their staff too. So clearly you can see that whoever has come in different is now got their hands in the kicking game. So that's really the major change. But everything else is steady. He's going to try to push the ball down the field. They're going to try to run. They got a good back. They're going to try to run the football. He's not going to go away from what he does. He's a good football coach. He's won a lot of football games.
Thanks again, Coach Carter, and I wish you well this Friday night as you travel to Hampton.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Delaware State opens up the MEAC schedule this Friday night as they'll travel to Hampton in a 7 p.m. kickoff. The game will be streamed live on HamptonPirates.com. We will now head to Washington, D.C. for our next call as first-year Howard University head coach Mike London joins us. The Bison made national headlines with an FBS win at UNLV last week, and we'll head to Kent State on Saturday. Good morning, Coach.
Good morning. How's everyone doing?
We're fine, Coach. My long question to you is, Howard University was all over the television and the radio and the internet this week, but there's still 10 games left. So how do you get everyone to focus on the task at hand, even though you're coming off a historic win last week?
No, you said it exactly. You want to celebrate the moment when it happened, but then, go back to the things that a level of consistency and improvement of play that are going to help us to remain competitive. So, it was a great accomplishment, not only for the university and school, but for the entire MEAC conference to be represented by such fine coaches and players in the league, but also the fact that, anybody can win on any given opportunity. And so, our mindset now is, take the corrections, from that game. There's a lot to be made, and formulate a game plan to get ready for Kent State, our next opponent.
Thank you, Coach. We'll now open up the call for questions from the media.
Ladies and gentlemen, to register a question, press 1-4 on your telephone keypad. Once again, to register a question, press 1-4. And our first question comes from the line of Jerry Brewer of the Washington Post. Please proceed with your question.
Hey, Coach, congratulations on the win. I'm wondering just how inundated you've been with kind of response from alumni. And as you were talking about earlier, just how difficult is it going to be to have that next game mentality when there's just so much buzz?
Well, I mean, obviously, you're very fortunate and honored to experience something like that. I mean, it's the first for these kids, and it's great to see the elation on their faces after the game, and the impact that it has, not only just the football alumni, stakeholders, the community, and that's very important. But there's another 10 games left on the schedule, and it's important that the refocus and the dedication to improving our play, is matched, with today's effort, today's practice. It was a long, arduous trip. We got back on campus about 11 o'clock Sunday morning, and so you got to get your bodies back acclimated to the time zone, but at the same time, you have to correct, repair, and reinvest in the time and the efforts it's going to take and play another FBS program. So we celebrate for the moment. It's good for the university, for the Howard community, but at the same time, we got another game to play, as you mentioned.
Our next question comes from the line of Craig Haley of Stats. Please proceed with the question.
Hi, Coach. In the preseason, maybe on MEAC Media Day, did you or your staff get the chance to talk to the North Carolina A&T coaches, considering they played Kent State last year?
We didn't have a chance to talk specifics, but definitely through the coaches meetings, having an opportunity to speak, probably more professionally than anything specific. But having been in the position before, being an FCS coach and having to prepare for an FBS team, I've done that. Been on both sides of it, and a lot of it is created by mindset, by a new culture that you're trying to establish here at Howard, and just the opportunities. And so we took and take the most of the opportunities that we had for this past game, and just everything seemed to kind of work, for us. I mean, there was some adversity, but at the same time, I was so proud of the effort by the coaches and the players to come back and win a big game for us.
Sure. Will you talk to those coaches, A&T coaches, this week?
I don't know, particularly as the specifics of things, and I know they played them, and I know that that it's important always to gather information. What we do know is that they played the national championship team, Clemson University, this past Saturday, and we know that I know Don Treadwell very well. He was a coach on the Boston College staff when I was there. So we may not specifically talk to them, but still gather the amount of information that we need to put a game plan together for this week.
Sure. Your team obviously did so many tremendous things this past Saturday. You mentioned moving on to corrections. What do you think your team has to improve on after Saturday?
There was a penalty aspect. Even though they had more penalties than we did, I thought we had costly penalties that extended third down situations that made it third and long. We did a great job in third down situations. We were 50%, which is pretty good. But we need to improve that. We need to improve, some kicking game elements as far as coveraging. They had a couple big returns, so we need to shore that up. Defensively, they hit a couple explosive plays for us. It's a matter of gap integrity and being sound. And so, this week for us is more about us, preparing and doing the things we need to do as an offense and defense and special teams unit to get correct and be fundamentally sound. and then we put a game plan together representative of what Kent State has and what they do. But this week is more about us and improving in a lot of areas that we could be more competitive in.
Our next question comes from the line of Stephen Gaither of HBCU Game Day. Please proceed with your question.
Hey, Coach London, how you doing today?
Hey, Stephen, how you doing?
Doing well. So you guys came back from a big win, like you said, got back on Sunday. What have you talked to them about dealing with the attention that they're getting now, maybe that they weren't getting, prior to the season or early on, just around campus, and just how is that, that part of the job now, keeping their heads on the swivel? You talk about coming back from the win football-wise, but mentally with everything else that's going on, how do you feel like your team is set up to deal with that?
It's important, and they know that a season is a season, and this was one game, and the accomplishment in the game speaks for itself. And there's a lot of buzz, as you said, nationally and around campus. But we got to be laser focused on the next task at hand, and that's Kent State. So our guys that we've been talking all this spring and during the summer, our mantra is mission possible, and so that's what we're talking about. That's what we're thinking about things and knowing that things can be accomplished for this program. So you're humble, and I'd rather be humble voluntarily than involuntarily. So it's important that we do refocus and put our sights on Kent State. But we'll be ready. We're getting ready right now. We're getting ready to meet and have practice today, and that'll be dedicated towards making ourselves a hard-to-beat football team, and that's first and foremost on the list of criteria.
Okay. Our next question comes on the line of Lute Williams of Black College Sports Page. Please proceed.
Yeah, Coach London, congratulations on the win. But I want you to describe those dance moves that have gone viral all over the country.
No, you didn't. No, you didn't.
In the room.
I got caught up in the moment with the celebration of the players, and it was so great to see just the elation, the smiles on their face, and just kind of like a yes. And so I didn't do any Michael Jackson moves or anything like that, but I just I got caught up with the players, and I enjoy doing that, to tell you the truth. I'm a passionate, energetic guy, and when I see it from the players, and we all celebrated together. So, but that was a great moment minus the dance moves.
Our next question comes from the line of Trevin A. Jones of Howard University Radio. Please proceed with your question.
Coach, congratulations on the win, Coach. Kent State, they only passed the ball 5 times against Clemson. I realize it's the number 1 team in the nation. Have you gotten a chance to look at them? Quarterback Nick Holly, number 4, and then running back, I believe it's Cassine Gamble, 34. What have you seen in their offense, and what is it that you're preparing for?
Yeah, it's the style of offense that they've adopted, that they've dedicated to their team. And again, going into our game, we're gonna practice for that, plan for that. But second game, you never know what you're going to see. But the quarterback and the running back are very good. It's almost like a triple option threat type of offense. So the whole got to protect the dive, the quarterback, and the pitch man. So we're it's a short week to turn around and prepare for something like that. But thankfully during the summer we dedicated a measured amount of pre-planning, not only for UNLV but Kent State and for Richmond. So knowing that the day was going to be short, we NCAA day off was on Monday, and we got today, Wednesday, and Thursday, and then we're traveling on Friday. So they're good football players, and I'm sure they're looking to get themselves back on the right side of the ledger as we come to town.
And my last question, Coach, you took the go-go offense nationwide. Now the cat's out of the bag, and you still have, as you said, Kent State and Richmond to play before you even get into conference play. Is that a disadvantage to you?
I don't believe so. I think the thing is for us is, there were some corrections that are on the field that need to be made. There's some yardage left on the field. There's big plays, explosive plays left on the field. There's some things from a penalty standpoint that we eliminate those things. It extends drives and gives us opportunities to hold on to the ball even longer. We had a time of possession plus on our side because of it. So, we just got to keep getting better at what we do and how we execute, and then don't worry about the who and the what as far as what's coming after us, but about what we do and how we remain competitive. For the things that we're trying to do. We're a run style offense that will throw the ball based on play action passes. So, and you got a great player like the preseason MEAC player Anthony Farrier. Kalen Newton did a great job, and so now we want to incorporate other players too. A guy like the receivers that we have, and Kyle Anthony and the others. So we're going to get better. We need to get better in order to move into this next game and the games to follow.
And our next question comes from the line of Ty Miller of SBN Sports. Please proceed.
Hey, Coach. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
Coach, the Flash did not have a whole lot to hang their hats on this past weekend, but the fact that their punter was named the Special Teams Player of the Week for his average of 50 yards per punt this past weekend, what does that tell you about the importance of the kicking game coming up against Kent State?
Well, obviously it's critically important, and they've got a guy who's got a strong leg. It's one of the areas we have to improve upon. I mean, on our kickoffs, we dedicated some bloop style kicks, and so that shortened the field for them a little bit. And thank goodness that our defense did a great job on holding them to field goals rather than touchdowns. I think that was a key point. Their punter, as you said, is an excellent guy, and that so the field position or the hidden yardage a lot of times is gauged off of that when he hangs it up there and you can't return it because of the distance and the hang time. So, there's a lot of improvement we have to do from our standpoint so we can shorten the field, with our kicking games, and that's something that we'll dedicate a dedicated amount of time to this week.
Thank you for your time, Coach London. Once again, congratulations on what you done last weekend and attention, and we wish you well at Kent State on Saturday.
All right, thank you. Have a good evening.
And we're aware that there are media that was attempting to speak with Coach London. If you need to speak with Coach London, please contact Howard University SID Derek Bryant, and his information can be found at hubison.com. Howard heads to Kent State this Saturday for a 3:30 p.m. kickoff. The contest will be streamed live on ESPN3.com. We will now be joined by third-year Norfolk State University head coach Latrell Scott. The Spartans dropped their season opener to Virginia State last weekend and will host William and Mary on Saturday. Good morning, Coach Scott.
Good morning, Ryan.
Coach, despite the score, both sides of the ball had their moments as you finished on the Virginia State side of the field in 8 of 13 offensive possessions, while your defense forced 7 punts and 3 turnovers. Talk about both sides' performances last week.
Well, ultimately, we didn't play well enough to win. It's a game that we expected to win, we hoped to win, and we did, and so you have to credit Virginia State for it. There were some positives, on both sides of the ball. I think if you give up less than 300 yards of offense, you should win a football game. I think if you have the ball in the red zone that many times, you should score more points. But again, at the end of the day, we didn't execute, and there's some things that I could have done much better as a head coach, preparing our guys for that football game. So we'll work this week and go back to the drawing board and get ready for a good William and Mary football team.
And speaking of William and Mary, you played them last year down there, and you had some pretty good success in certain times against them. Just talk about what will you need to do in order to be successful against them this year.
Well, I looked at it yesterday. It was a 21-10 football game at the half, and William and Mary came out in the second half, and we couldn't stop the run. So obviously we're going to have to be able to stop those guys from running the football, and obviously if they saw the way that we responded to Virginia State's tempo last week, then they're probably going to try to tempo us some. And obviously, as we just said, offensively, when we have opportunities to score, we need to make sure we do, and we've got to play much better on special teams as well.
And also just talk about your experience in general in trying to groom younger players at key skill positions such as quarterback, and how to get them ready to play at the level you want to on a consistent level.
Well, I think you have to prepare them as much as you possibly can, but there's no real experience like game experience. And, Tripp and Pough both played fairly well, for their first college football game. They missed some throws, but they had,
7 or 8 drop balls between the two of them. I don't think those guys played poorly by any stretch, but we're going to need both quarterbacks throughout the year, and whether we continue to go with both of them remains to be seen. But as long as we're in non-conference play, we're going to continue to play both of them, and to make sure we've got 2 quarterbacks for the season.
Thanks, Coach. We'll now open up the call for questions from the media.
Once again, to register a question, press 1-4 on your telephone keypad. To register a question, press 1-4 on your telephone keypad. And there are no questions at this time.
Coach, talk about the play of Marcus Taylor. He had a big game at wide receiver. Just talk about what he brought to the table and what you expect from him as the year progresses.
Well, Marcus is one of our best offensive football players. Does a tremendous job playing wide out for us and special teams. We had Marcus open down the sideline, for a possible touchdown. We missed the throw, but, when he did get his hands on the ball, he made plays, and we will try to continue to make sure that he gets as many touches as we can possibly get him from week to week.
And also, you're playing, once again, William and Mary, but you're back at home and just trying to get the team to focus on the opponent in hand as opposed to what happened last week. What is the mindset and what you have to do to get them to approach each game differently and not worry about what took place the previous week?
Well, I think the mindset has to be, we can't let Virginia State beat us twice. We lost to Virginia State. There's nothing we can do about it other than come back as a team and a staff and then prepare better. As I said, there were, things that I could have done better as a head coach and our staff could have done better to prepare the kids better. But we're just letting those guys know that we're going to get out there this afternoon and work at it and be ready to go on Saturday when William Mary shows up.
And lastly, Bobby Price had a pretty good game. 10 tackles, 1 interception, and a pass deflection. Just talk about his play on defense.
Bobby's another good young football player. Started for us as a true freshman. Got off to a good start. Picked the ball off. Had an opportunity to score. Put us in really good field position. But again, he's another good football player that we have. That's a sophomore, and we'll continue to groom these guys and develop these guys. And, by the time it's time for us to be ready, we'll be ready to go.
Thank you, Coach, and good luck this Saturday against William and Mary, and we'll see you there.
Thank you.
Norfolk State remains at home versus William and Mary Saturday evening at 6 p.m. The game will be streamed live on NSUSpartans.com. That's NSUSpartans with the S.com. We'll now cross the bay to talk with fourth-year Hampton University head coach Connell Maynor. Hampton opens up MEAC play this Friday night as they're coming off a loss at Ohio, and they'll play Delaware State. Good morning, Coach. How you doing?
Good morning, Ron. How you doing?
I'm fine. Talk about last week's game, Coach, in terms of how did your newcomers and players with limited experience adjust to their first significant action, and it was against an FBS opponent?
Wasn't very good, Ron. Went down to Ohio, and they basically took us out to the woodshed and gave us a good old-fashioned butt whooping. But again, my young quarterbacks, inexperienced quarterbacks, didn't play their best, missed some reads and some throws, and the young wide receivers who talked about earlier that we had some talent, but they wasn't experienced and hadn't made the plays in the game, and they didn't perform very well. And offensively, we didn't perform very well. Here, I think 7 3-and-outs. And anytime you do that and your defense got to play the whole time, they get wore down. Those guys was, of course, trying to pound us and run the ball down our throat. And defense had to play 20 minutes in the first half, and it still was manageable at halftime at 20-0. We had the ball coming out. If we could muster something, get a drive going, and get back in the game, get the defense in life. But we couldn't, and gave them a short field right there coming out of the half, and they scored coming out of the half and made it 26 or 27-0, and then it just snowballed from there. So, they got a good football team, a good program, and they're not 59 points better than us. We just didn't play very well, and we got to play a lot better this week if we expect to get a win against a much improved Dale State football team.
Well, speaking of Dale State, it's a conference game and it's quickly approached us on the schedule. How do you affect your preparation in terms of not having another game to kind of see what your newcomers can do?
Well, I mean, they say you get the most improvement from game 1 to game 2, so we're looking for a lot of improvement in this game. And like you said, it's an FCS opponent in Dale State, and so we're back in conference, and we need to play well. We need to play well on all three teams, defense, special teams, and offense. And we know Dale State's going to be ready to play. They played Delaware State. Dale very tough last week. The defense is playing very hard, and the offense is still improving. So it'll probably be a low-scoring game. We have to be prepared for those guys. We know they're a much improved team, and we're not going to sleep on them. But we got a lot of work to do ourselves, and so we didn't clean that up and be ready to play Friday night.
And about your defense, you forced 7 tackles for loss and had a turnover. Just talk about their play last week.
Yeah, I like I say, they kind of just got wore down. They was playing pretty solid early. Beginning of the second quarter, we had a drive, got into the red zone, and if we could have got a touchdown there, made the game 7-7 in the second quarter, but we didn't get it done. And and then defense right back out there, and like I said, they got wore down. I thought they didn't play as bad as 59 points. We gave them a lot of short fields and put them in bad situations, and they just got wore down. So we need to get that corrected and make people drive the field against our defense and don't leave them on the field all game and give those guys a fighting chance, and we'll be okay.
Thank you, Coach. We'll now open up the call for questions from the media.
All right.
Ladies and gentlemen, to register a question, press 1-4. Once again, to register a question, press 1-4. And our first question comes from the line of Ty Miller of SBN Sports. Please proceed.
Hey, Coach Maynor, how you doing?
I'm doing good, Ty. How you doing?
I'm good. Coach Solis, she echoed what you just said about your defense because you said that early on, Hampton's defense made the yards hard to come by. So being that is the case with your defense, if you can get your offense going, you seem like you would be in pretty good shape in terms of making an improvement from week 1 to week 2. So what is the most important aspect of your offense that you need to get going at this part?
It's still the quarterbacks making good decisions with the football and the young wide receivers coming through, making a couple of plays for us. We feel pretty good about the run game with Yaki and McKenzie and the offensive line. We think we can get 3-4 yards, but we got to be able to throw the ball and complete some passes. We had some RPOs, and quarterbacks just made some bad decisions on those plays, and so they got to play a lot better, and the young receivers, and then the offense will get clicking. And we feel pretty good about the defense if we can get the offense going, like you said. So it's just a matter of getting this offense going and not keeping that defense on the field all game.
No, what you know, Coach, the fact that you do seem to have a pretty good defense there, and you actually did well in the first half against Ohio. So how much confidence do you have by playing this opponent going forward once you get into the MEAC schedule like you are this weekend against Delaware State?
Well, that's one of the reasons you would like to play an FBS program, to see where you are. And we saw that we got a pretty good defense, offense that we still got some work to do. And so you learn about your team. We had some guys that got banged up that didn't quit. They stayed in the game. Guys were bruised up and banged up, and they didn't quit. They kept fighting. So, we got what we wanted. I mean, we didn't get the W, but we learned a lot about our team and where we need to go from here.
Thank you, Coach.
Okay, and there are no further questions at this time.
Okay, Ryan, let's go.
Coach, also, speaking of the game this Friday, it's a Friday night game, and also, it's a home opener, and just talk about how do you get your players and team to stay focused on the game, because I know it's a lot of hoopla going around this game this weekend.
Well, Ron, the way we played last week and got embarrassed, it's not going to be hard to get them focused. Guys are working hard and can't wait to get back on the field to show that we're not that bad of a team. And, as far as the hoopla going around first home game, we're going to take them off campus Thursday night, and we're going to stay in the hotel, get them away from this stuff, and prepare just like it was a Saturday game. And so we'll be in the hotel, and then we'll come back, eat breakfast, and then we'll go back, and we'll come back and go to pregame, and then we'll go play the game. So we're not going to change anything in that aspect and give them away from their classmates and the people asking questions and wanting tickets and all that stuff, and get prepared to play a football game.
And speaking of your defense, Kamari Alcorn had 10 tackles and a tackle and a half for loss. Just talk about, well, who is he and what does he bring to your defense?
He's a great addition. We got him from Chowan. He's a grad student. He graduated from Chowan. And he got a motor, man. He has a motor that won't stop, and he's brought a lot of leadership to that defensive line with On Over Subi and those guys, and he just made that defense that was already good that much better. And he's going to only continue to play that way when we get in conference. I hope he plays that way and a little bit better, and I expect him to.
And then also, Yaki Johnson only had 15 yards. Is that just a situation where you just didn't want to play him as much, or you want to get some other guys some game action?
No, well, we ran him, but we was going 3 and out, Ryan. You know, they had a good defense, and you know, when we tried to throw the ball, we couldn't throw the ball successfully, and made some bad reads and some bad decisions, and so we had a lot of 3 and out. So therefore, he didn't get a lot of carries. But then we got him out of there in the fourth quarter. Also, once the game kind of got out of hand, I didn't want to lose my potential all-conference running back in a game that was out of hand. So we got him out of there in the fourth quarter and gave some other people the ball.
And my last question was pertaining to Ohio. Like I said last week, y'all don't play many FBS opponents. And so now that you kind of got that under your belt, how do you make adjustments coming from their style of play to the MEAC style in terms of the physicality, in terms of their depth?
Well, yeah, they was huge, man, and they was running them in there and rotating them in there, and we had to keep sending the same guys out there, and you kind of get wore down when you play those guys because they got so many scholarships. But we knew that going in, and you know, you just got to fight and be tough, and you know, and when you get to conference, you know, we just got to continue to do what we do, but we know we're battle tested, and our guys are tough, and so we'll be ready for the conference play.
Well, thank you, Coach, and good luck Friday night as you open up conference play against Delaware State.
Thank you, Ron.
Hampton University will open at home Friday night versus Delaware State. The game will be streamed live on HamptonPirates.com, and kickoff is slated for 7 p.m. And we're now joined by second-year Savannah State head coach Erik Raeburn. Coach Raeburn and Savannah State were open last week as they prepare for their season opener this Saturday at Appalachian State. Good morning, Coach.
Good morning.
Coach, with this being your first game week of your second season, is there anything different that you will do now compared to last year, now that you know your team and the personnel involved?
You know, obviously, I think it's an advantage now that we have a better handle on our own roster. You know, who's you know, what everyone's strengths and weaknesses are. So I guess that'll help us a little bit as we try to put guys in the best position to be successful. But other than our routine and things like our routine and that type of thing, our scheme offensively and defensively, we won't make any big changes there. But I do think it's an advantage now in year two to, you know, have a better understanding of all of our players' strengths and weaknesses.
And last week, Appalachian State fell 31-10 to Georgia. Just talk about Appalachian State from what you've seen on tape, and how do you approach them?
Yeah, you know, obviously, great football program, incredible tradition. They played. They're incredibly good on defense. I think they held Georgia to 340 some odd yards. So it's going to be a great challenge for us for sure. They took Tennessee to overtime last year. You know, obviously played Georgia very respectably this year, so they're used to competing with SEC teams, and so they're really well coached. Their guys play hard, so it'll be tough for us for sure. But we're looking forward to finally getting to play a game. After having to watch everybody play this past week, our guys are excited to finally get to go out and play a different opponent.
And just provide to us some of the names to look out for from Savannah State this upcoming season.
Obviously our quarterback, T.J. Bell, was a freshman last year. We really feel like he's made – we thought he had a good season last year as a true freshman, but, the off-season, spring football, all the work he's put in over the summer and in our preseason camp, we're hoping that he can have a build on the season he had last year. Stephen Banks on the defensive side of the ball, he was an all-conference performer last year, finished in the top, I think, 5 in terms of sacks and tackles for loss in the conference, and so again, he's had an excellent off season, and we're hoping that that he can continue to play at the level he played at last year. So I think those are probably the top 2 guys. I guess also on defense, Donald Rutledge, who did play for us last year. We think he's a really talented guy, and we're hoping that now that he can finally get on the field, that he can really help us in the back end. He'll be playing at the safety position for us. We feel like he's got good ball skills and is a good tackler, and we're hoping he can kind of bolster our secondary. On the offensive side, at running back, we feel like with Uriah Oliver, again, who didn't play last year, but we feel like has had a great spring and a really good fall camp. We're hoping that he can have kind of a breakout year in the MEAC as well.
Thank you, Coach. We'll now open up the call for questions from the media.
Once again, to register a question, press 1-4 on your telephone keypad. To register a question, press 1-4 on your telephone keypad. And our next question comes from the line of David Squires of The Undefeated. Please proceed with your question.
Yeah, Coach, I was wondering, I know there's a lot of preparation for football, but looking at what's going on in Houston and looking at what is happening off the coast of the Atlantic, have you all had any discussions about Hurricane Irma and any contingency plans?
Obviously we had that issue last year where we were displaced for about a week last year. One of our games was canceled and rescheduled for the end of the season. The school has a plan in place for sure. Obviously we've watched. There's about 7 or 8 different models that they show. Only one of them has it hitting us directly. So we're hoping that that thing takes a turn and loses some steam before it hits land. But one of the models that the meteorologist predictions that they have made would have it hitting us. Obviously, it wouldn't happen until next week. Like I think the prediction said Tuesday or Wednesday, something like that. So I think we'll be fine this weekend. But obviously, all the people in Savannah are monitoring that storm pretty closely, and unfortunately, having gone through that last year, we at least have an idea of what it will take to get our kids off campus somewhere safe and hope and cross our fingers and hope it doesn't do as much damage as what Harvey did.
Thanks, Coach.
Our next question comes from the line of Spencer Turkin of Savannah State University. Please proceed with the question.
Coach, you saw what Howard did this past weekend. Does that kind of give the student athletes a renewed sense of confidence heading into this week?
I think our guys, certainly gives them some pride to see, another MEAC team knock off an FBS school, and certainly, they saw how well Bethune-Cookman hung in there against a great Miami team. So, I think they take pride when the other MEAC teams play well, but obviously App State is a much better football team than UNLV. So, but I think our guys are. I know our guys always take pride when the conference schools do well out of conference.
And there are no further questions at this time.
Thank you.
Well, Coach Raeburn, my last question is that last week you had a coach at University of Tennessee, Chattanooga. He's a former D3 coach for John Carroll, and obviously you were coming from the D3 ranks. After being in the MEAC and FCS and playing FBS opponents, what is the biggest transition have you seen that y'all have faced making the move up?
Yeah, I guess certainly the calendar, from a recruiting standpoint, that's much different. I think it's an advantage, having scholarships that makes recruiting so much more efficient, I guess. So I think that's an advantage moving up, but it's a change. It's an adjustment you have to make. But I think the football's football. I guess certainly I imagine he feels the same way at Tennessee Chattanooga as I feel at Savannah State. Is the travel's a little bit more typically. In most Division III conferences, you don't have you're playing a lot more schools geographically in your area, so there's less travel, to deal with, less logistics there. So there's a little more planning that maybe goes into place when you're playing at the FCS level and you have substantial trips, every other weekend. But like I said, the football part, it's really not different. Coaching the guys, game planning, preparing, those type of things. They're pretty much the same, regardless of the level that you're at.
Well, thank you, Coach, and good luck this weekend as you travel to Boone, North Carolina to face Appalachian State, and we'll talk with you once again next week.
Thank you.
Savannah State opens up its 2017 season at Appalachian State this Saturday at 3:30 p.m. The game will be streamed live on ESPN3.com. We will now be joined by South Carolina State University head coach Buddy Pough. The Bulldogs fell to Southern University this past Sunday in the 13th annual MEAC SWAC Challenge and will take on Charleston Southern this weekend in Orangeburg. Good morning, Coach. How you doing?
Good morning, Ryan. How are you?
I'm fine. Coach, after a tough loss last week, they had a lot of emotions involved. How do you get the team to quickly forget about what took place on Sunday and focus on a tough opponent in Charleston Southern coming into your home stadium?
Well, Ryan, that is the task at this point. But we don't have enough time to actually sit around and brood, over all of the problems that we had this past Saturday. We've got to quickly decipher them and, get on to the task of seeing if you can fix as much as you can fix, in a short period of time, and then getting on to, a preparation for, our upcoming opponent, Charleston Southern. The Southern game, was a tough one that we didn't feel we played our very best, but at the same time, I've got to give Southern credit. Those guys did a nice job of scheming us, defending us, and I've got to take my hat off to Coach Oldham and his crowd. The fact that they did a nice job. So that's behind us now. We like the fact that we get a chance to play home. It's a kind of unusual occurrence after the last few years here. We play home this Saturday night against Charleston Southern. The plot thickens, though. Those guys are really, really good. They got beaten up some themselves this past Saturday against Mississippi State down in Starkville, Mississippi. I've had a lot of cowbells shook in my face over the years, so I can imagine, what they went through down there. And, Mississippi State's offensive line is just massive, and they just kind of masked them some. But, we know that this is probably, as good a football team as there is around these parts. Charleston Southern's ranked in the top 20. They were ranked 14 last week. I don't know exactly what they ranked this week, but I'm sure, they didn't fall very far because they lost to to a bowl championship opponent. But, we think that this may be a knockdown drag out. At least we hope it's a knockdown drag out. We want to get in it and try to see if we can hang in there with these guys and try to see if we can figure out a way to win a football game here at home this Saturday night at 6 o'clock.
And speaking of Charleston Southern, just talk about their offense in terms of what they run and their physicality, and how do they match up against you all on defense?
Well, they are an option style kind of offense. If you've seen, the variations of the Wofford / Georgia Tech, all that kind of stuff, Georgia Southern attack, they're kind of variation of that deal. They're more or less, under the shotgun style of attack as opposed to going underneath like the Georgia Southerns of the world used to do. But they can run it, and they played 3 quarterbacks this past Saturday, and all of them seem to be real proficient and in handling that offense that way. So, they seem to be really, really understanding of what they're trying to accomplish that way and how they're trying to attack. And then their defense, Ryan, is real, real good. They salty. They got enough doggone defensive front guys, to maybe fill a Division I bowl championship roster. Just a bunch of physical and athletic style kind of guys that can run around, and linebackers will strike in. Secondary guys that will tackle you, everyone. I saw a couple of their guys just knock a couple of those Mississippi State guys around, from time to time. So, it's a tough deal. These guys are really, really good, and they're beating up everybody in the state down in these parts. They're beating the Citadel the last couple of years. The Citadel's going to quit playing them. They beat up on Charleston, on Coastal Carolina. They're beating up on everybody. So, this is a big task this week. We got our hands full.
Thank you, Coach. We'll now open up the call for questions from the media.
Ladies and gentlemen, to register a question, press 1-4. Once again, to register a question, press 1-4 on your telephone keypad. And our next question comes from the line of Lute Williams of Black College Sports Page. Please proceed. Hello, Mr. Williams. Your line is open. Please proceed with the question.
Yeah, Coach. Good morning, Coach.
Hey,
yeah,
Lute,
no
how
problem.
you?
I'm doing fine, man. I would have, true or false, Coach, you were happy with the way your team played in that you had a red zone inside the 10-yard interception. You had a guy drop basically a touchdown pass. So, and it seems like you guys came out and played much better in the second half. So, being that was a non-conference game and you didn't get a win, you did see some good things, true or false?
We did, yeah. I'm not happy, though. This is a game that I would have liked to have won. We've been for a good many years here starting the season off, and I didn't want to do that, deal again. But at the same time, you're exactly right. There are some things that we can build on, as we go into our next game, trying to go into our conference. But, when is the deal? Everything else is kind of,
right.
You get it.
But were you pleased with the way Ford handled himself, quarterback? I thought This is my opinion. I thought he acquitted himself well, all things considered.
Yeah, he played pretty well there for a minute or two. He had some nice moments, and we've got to become more consistent as an offense. I think we've got to gather some confidence in a way where we can go out and play that way all the time. But right now we still got to fix all of our issues, and we got enough of those to go around.
What do you say to a kid after and if I know you, Coach, you might not say anything to him to keep from saying.
Believe it or not, I had not. I was talking to one of the reporters in our press conference here yesterday, and he was wanting to know what I said. I told him I hadn't said anything. I've been around football now long enough where I've seen enough balls caught and dropped that it happens. I mean, so what do you do? The kid didn't want to drop a football, so it just happens. I remember we were down in Alabama some years back, and we had one of our big-time guys who's playing the NFL now, the Gator Armor ball down there, and it just kind of goes through his hands that way. So it happens. So you move on. You don't let a game come down to one possession. That's what you don't do, and that's why we lost the football game. It wasn't because of that one play.
Our next question comes from the line of Ty Miller of SBN Sports. Please proceed.
Hey, Coach Few, how you doing, man?
Hey, Ty, how are you today?
I'm good. Coach, you mentioned the accolades of Charleston Southern, but looking at that game, they only gained 33 yards against Mississippi State. So that tells you how good Mississippi State was. How good is this Charleston Southern team if you don't look at that tape?
I think they are real good. Ty, I got some tape around here, from the previous years. Wofford went to the semifinals of the championship subdivision playoffs last year. And they had a knockdown, drag out, down to the wire, that game. And then they beat the Citadel last year, who won the Southern Conference, at their place last year. So I don't think you need to say a lot more when you start talking about drawing some conclusions from, some of the parallels you see that way.
And there are no further questions at this time.
Coach, and also my last question will be just talk about your defense last week. Darius Leonard was all over the field, along with Deshaun Taylor, and then you had some other guys that played big, especially down the stretch. Just talk about how did they do throughout the game last Sunday.
Well, Ryan, you're right. We did have some guys that played pretty well, after, a slow start. We didn't play very good, I think, in the first part of the game. And, a lot of that, I think, was due to the weather. We didn't necessarily handle, the heat, the pace of the game very well at the early stages on defense. And, that was disappointing. We had some adjustment problems and some fundamental problems. But, as we got into the game, some of our other guys, I thought, played well. Devondre Powell and Damu Ford. Heck, I don't know what Damu's real name, Devondre or something like that. Ford, playing well. So we got some guys that we're finding, besides the Leonards and the Taylors, that you've been hearing around here for a pretty good while that look like they might be able to help us, win some games in the future.
Well, thanks, Coach, for your time, and good luck this Saturday evening as you host Charleston Southern.
Thank you very much, guys. Appreciate you.
South Carolina State will host Charleston Southern this Saturday evening in Orangeburg, South Carolina. Kickoff is set for 6 p.m. We will now move on to Greensboro, North Carolina, as North Carolina A&T State head coach Rod Broadway joins us. The Aggies defeated Gardner-Webb last weekend and will host Mars Hill on Saturday evening. Good morning, Coach.
Good morning, Ron. How you doing?
I'm fine. How you doing?
I'm good, thank you.
Coach, last week the Aggies put together a complete game on both sides of the ball as you took control of the game from the opening whistle. Just talk about the game as a whole against Gardner-Webb.
Well, I thought we played well. I thought the first half we played extremely well. And, I just listened to Buddy talk about how good Charleston Southern is. and Gardner-Webb spanked them last year, and they took Liberty in the overtime that just beat Baylor. So we thought we had a handful, and it may have just been one of those days. Sometimes things like that happen. You can't explain why, but I don't know if we were that much better than them, but we were that day. I don't know if we could do that again if we played them again this weekend, but we're glad to get out there with a win.
Andy, quarterback, he had a great game back since last season. Career performance with over 300-plus passing yards. Just talk about his growth as a starter, and is that a sign of his work over the summer to get better?
I hope so, Ron, but I thought he was playing really well last year when he got hurt. The 4 games previous to him getting hurt, he was completing 72% of his passes, so he was hot, and he just gotten in here, and, he's turned himself into a thinking quarterback, and he's getting the ball in the right places now and making good decisions, so he's really grown as a quarterback, and we're happy for him, and glad to see the growth that he's shown here in the first week of the season.
Well, thank you, Coach. We'll now open up the call for questions from the media.
Ladies and gentlemen, to register a question, press 1-4 on your telephone keypad. Once again, to register a question, press 1-4 on your telephone keypad. And there are no questions at this time.
Well, Coach, talk about Mars Hill this weekend and just provide us a scouting report on who they are and what you need to do to be successful.
Okay. Ron, we just need to play like we're capable of playing. And, the key for us, and I think any football team this time of year, is to get better. And that's our goal this week, is try to make some improvement from how we played last week. And, the focus has got to be on us and our effort. Because I thought, last week I thought there was times we really played well, but we got to do it for 60 minutes. So we're going to try to improve, our focus for 60 minutes this week. And, quite frankly, I think we're probably a little bit better than Mars Hills, but that didn't mean anything. I'm sure UNLV thought they were better than Howard last week. So you got to prepare and you got to play, and they have some good athletes out there, so we just got to get our guys mentally ready to play, and if we play like we're capable of playing, we should be okay.
And defensively, just talk about 34 yards passing you held Gardner-Webb to. Just talk about the play of your secondary, but just your defense overall also.
Well, I thought we played well. We had, 9 tackles for loss, and we were able to put a lot of pressure on the quarterback, and we got him out of real rhythm a little bit early in the game, and I think that really helped us. I think the first play, we tackled him for 5 or 6 yard loss, and the next play we got him for a loss, and the next play we batted the ball out of the air, and I think he got shook after that and didn't play like I'd seen him play all of last year. But I thought our defense played well. I thought our coaching staff did a great job of getting our guys prepared and coming up with a scheme that gave us an opportunity to win the ball game.
And speaking of Gardner-Webb, you've had some success against non-conference opponents throughout your career. We can go all the way back to North Carolina Central. I know about Grambling, and obviously you won a few big games non-conference at A&T. So just talk about your approach to preparing for the non-conference teams, and how do you, is there anything special you do, or is just good coaching?
I don't know. I think it's more good players, Ryan, than anything. I think most people tell you that you win with players, but we don't change a whole lot. And when we play out of conference, we try to make it about us instead of about who we're playing a lot of times. So the focus has always been on us, how we play, fundamentals, technique, and effort. And that's usually our focus going into games as we play these out-of-conference people and in-conference people. We try to make it about how the Aggies going to play and our preparation, because we believe that winning is in the preparation.
We do have a question from the line of Ty Miller of SBN Sports. Please proceed.
Hey, Coach Broadway, how are you?
I'm good, Ty. How you doing?
I'm good, man. I just got one quick question for you. A lot of people were asking about what your team lost last year, but I wanted you to talk about what your team still has in terms of veterans on the team, like Maynor, Parker, and Garden, and how they stepped up this week, and they were all honored by the MEAC.
Okay, well, you start with Raeburn, our quarterback. As I said earlier, he was playing extremely well last year when he got hurt. He was, I guess, the 4 games previous to him getting hurt, he was completing 72% of his passes, and he got hot this weekend, had an outstanding game. We have an offensive lineman that's probably NFL bound. You know, he's an NFL talent, probably like 10, 12 years up there, and Brandon Parker. We have the freshman of the year wide receiver, and Elijah Bell. So we feel good about a lot of the players that we have. We think we probably have a little bit more depth than we've had in the past, and the receiver may be the strongest position on our football team at this point. We feel good that Cartwright's a good running back. He's not Tyreek, but he's a good running back, and he's a all MEAC type running back. So we just got to get him going this week, and we got to establish a ground game. And on defense, our secondary is much improved. So we're looking forward to going out and competing to see how well these guys do the rest of the year.
Thank you, Coach.
Thank you, Ty.
There are no further questions at this time.
Coach, my last question is just talk about home opener. Obviously, coming off a good non-conference win, and the buzz is there. So just talk about just trying to get your team to stay on even keel heading into your home opener this week.
Well, you're exactly right. It should be a nice turnout here, opening week, and have an opportunity to come home and play before our fans. And, speaking of our fans, man, they really showed up last week up at Gardner Webb. So we got to get the same type turnout here, and hopefully we'll get the same type effort from our players that we had last week. But we got to get them focused, and we got to get them playing hard. So we're excited to be home.
Well, thank you, Coach. Good luck this Saturday versus Mars Hill, and we'll talk with you once again next week at this time.
All right, thanks, Ryan.
You're welcome. North Carolina A&T will face Mars Hill at home this Saturday evening in Greensboro, North Carolina. Kickoff is set for 6 p.m., and the game will be streamed on www.ncataggies.com. That's ncataggies.com. We will close out this morning's teleconference with our final head coach in Jerry Mack of North Carolina Central University. The Eagles fell to Duke this past Saturday and will remain in Durham as they'll host Shaw University on Saturday. Good morning, Coach.
Good morning, Ryan.
Coach, last week there was a game we had several youngsters quickly gain some game experience against an ACC opponent. Just talk about last week's game and what you think was gained from that experience.
Well, I think the biggest thing that we gained when we get a chance to play in games like that, our guarantee-type games, is experience for a lot of people, and also, too, just the speed and the tempo of what competition is going to be about. You play a Power 5 caliber team, guys are bigger, faster, stronger a lot of times in certain areas. Your guys get a chance to see what it's going to be like once we go into our level of competition in the MEAC play. So that experience of the speed and the tempo, it helps us going forward.
Also, you had a bright spot in the game and freshman running back Isaiah Totten. He had a solid game in 2 facets, offense and on special teams. Just talk about his development so far.
Well, we've been really excited about Isaiah for a long time now. Ever since last year, we really thought that he'd have a chance to be a really good player at our level. We went into spring football and then going into fall camp as well. He continually to do the things that he did throughout last season when he got redshirted. So now, he got a chance to go out there on that stage, and he looked like he belonged. Had a big long run for a touchdown, about 80-plus yards. Then on special teams had, I think, close to 100 yards as far as in kickoff return. And that's a guy that we're really excited about going forward this year. We got 3 really nice backs we feel now with him that can all do some damage in our conference.
This week you play a Shaw University team that's a rival. Obviously, both of y'all are close to each other. With this being a rivalry game, what's the message you tell your team to what to expect as you play a team such as Shaw, that in some cases they're going to be fired up to play you all?
Oh, they're going to come ready to play. I know Coach Jones, he's going to have those guys ready. You know, he's very familiar with our program and what we do around here. I can tell he's done a really good job of changing the picture some over there at Shaw. They're a lot better, much improved football team than they were last year. They got some dynamic guys in some certain positions. He's flipped the roster some and got some better personnel. And, you know, you can just tell by watching the film from last week, even though they came out on the opposite end of what you would want. But, you know, our guys just got to continue to preach to them about taking it one game at a time, making sure we dot our I's and cross our T's and approach this game no different than we would approach any other game. These guys they're on scholarship, too. They're a good football team, so they're not going to lay down for anybody.
Thank you, Coach. We'll now open up the call for questions from the media.
Ladies and gentlemen, to register a question, press 1-4. Once again, to register a question, press 1-4 on your telephone keypad. And there are no questions at this time.
Coach Mack, I saw a tweet recently that was addressed to, I guess, some fans. It was about what happened the other day has happened several years, and you turn around and had a great season after that. So just talk about your message to people who may think different of the season based on just one little game.
Yeah, no different than any other year. You know, we usually start off with one of our guarantee games in the first probably 1 or 2 games of the season. Last year, I think we started off 0-2 before we got into our non-conference and then went on to conference play. And then the year before, we started off, 0 and actually I think we started off 1-3 that year as well. So like we've kind of been used to this as far as starting out playing some FBS opponents in Power 5, just haven't been able to come out on the opposite end of the spectrum. But those games, they don't indicate to me nowhere exactly what the future holds. It's a long season. People are high on a lot of people at this time of the season, just like preseason. You know, we'll just kind of see where this all kind of falls once we kind of get into people that's kind of our caliber and into our conference play.
And talk about the play of your quarterback, Micah Zanders, 10 of 17, 58%, had a 92% efficiency rating. Just talk about what did you see from him in the first game that you liked?
I thought Micah showed some toughness in that game. You know, he took a couple of shots in the game, and he was able to get back up and continue to go out there and compete. He showed some poise, was able to stand down the barrel in the pocket and still deliver some passes. And he really impressed us, just to be honest with you. And we're going to continue to move forward with him. He's going to enter this game as a starter as well. You know, we just got some things that we'll continue to look for from our second quarterback, Chauncey Caldwell. We want to continue to kind of look at him and see what he's going to bring to the table. But it was we were inspired. Both of those guys showed some flashes of being able to have some success at this level.
Our next question comes from the line of Luke Williams of Black College Sports Page. Please proceed with the question.
Yeah, Ryan took my question, Coach, about with the way Zanders played. What about the running game? Did McLean and Simpson, did they get a chance to run the ball a lot?
They touched it a few times. We didn't have very many plays overall in the game, but they still touched the ball a couple of times. Ramon started off the game, and then Darrell got a chance to touch the ball some. And we're going to, we feel like with Todd now, like I said before, we feel like we got 3 nice running backs that can all contribute for our football team. And it's just going to be one of those situations, when guys start to get hot or when we start to get guys the ball and they have success, that's kind of where we're going to probably stay. So they're going to be competing for carries in that backfield this year.
You talked about last week about how this game over the past couple of years has been kind of a measuring stick about where you are. This one may have been more lopsided than the previous 2, would you say? And what do you think? That's just an indication of some of the youth of your team?
Not really. When you look at statistically, we had less penalties. We had double the first downs. We had more yards. We did a lot of good things in that game this past week. We probably didn't help ourselves out by we gave up a pick. We threw a pick 6. The guy did a heck of a job jumping, and then we had one snapped over a quarterback's head for a safety. So we probably gave them 9 points just off mistakes alone. But, defensively, you could see some flashes. Our strength levels have improved. I know it doesn't seem like it from the statistics, but it was some guys that really played hard and continue to compete out there that I was really impressed with. So like I said, we'll kind of see once we start to get into conference play and teams that kind of more on our level, just kind of where exactly we're at.
Okay, Coach. Thanks, Coach. Good luck.
No problem.
There are no further questions at this time.
Coach Mack, it was good also to see some familiar names on defense, such as Reggie Hunter and Alden McClellan have good games. Reggie had 10 tackles, McClellan had 9, and both of them had a tackle for loss. Also, just talk about how you think they gel with your newcomers, such as De Niro Laster, who also had 9 tackles also.
Yeah, I've said it a long time. I think we got something special on the defense side of the football this year. I'm looking forward to seeing as the season goes along how they continue to grow and how they continue to gel and play together. Antonio Brown did some good things. He had a sack and a couple tackles for losses. Like you said, Denario, Reggie, Alden, all those guys did some really good things out there on Saturday. And, we're still kind of learning and growing. But the great thing is we came out healthy. We didn't have any season-ending injuries. We didn't have anybody probably is going to miss the upcoming game this week because of injury. So that's one of the things that we really were fortunate to have in that game.
And like I've asked last week, how did your field goal kicker do in this first game?
I didn't do bad. He had an opportunity to hit an extra point. He knocked it through, and out of the kickoff duties, he did some good things. So we were impressed. Aiden for his first game on that stage, he didn't seem like he was shook up by the stage. So that's what we were most impressed with.
And then we'll go back to Shaw for my last question. We haven't played each other in quite some time, and just with Shaw coming in town, and again y'all knowing each other through history, just talk about what do you tell your team to worry about in terms of trying for them to get better in addition to worrying about Shaw?
We just got to control what we control. We feel like if we go out there, offense, defense, and special teams, and execute the things that we've been coached to do, for the last months or so during camp, and we feel like if we go out there and we play with some great effort and play hard, we'll have a chance to win the football game. If we lollygag and if we turn the ball over and have a lot of penalties, it's tough to win any football game when you do those types of things. So we're going to try to execute well, and we're going to try to play our brand of ball like we always do at Central.
Well, thank you, Coach. Thanks for taking time out and speaking with us this morning, and we'll look forward to hearing from you once again this time next week.
No problem. Thank you, Ryan.
You're welcome. North Carolina Central will open up at home versus Shaw University this Saturday. Kickoff is set for 6 p.m., and the contest will be streamed live on nccueaglepride.com. That's nccueaglepride.com.